I'm Emily, and I thought I knew what love looked like. Those golden summer days with Ryan, building dreams in a small town world of dusty roads and whispered promises. But beneath the warmth of our marriage, a shadow crept in, cold and suffocating, threatening to tear apart everything I held dear. My heart raced with a mix of trust and unease as one fateful night at a rundown hotel shifted the ground beneath me, exposing secrets I never saw coming. What did Ryan ask of me that shattered my world in a single suffocating moment? Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of my life, staring into a mirror that reflects a version of me I thought I knew. My name's Emily. I'm 23, and up until recently, I believed I had everything mapped out. Born and raised in a sleepy corner of rural Ohio, my world was all endless fields, dusty roads, and the kind of quiet that wraps around you like a worn-out quilt. It's where I met Ryan, the boy who'd become my everything. I was just 15, sneaking glances at him across the high school cafeteria, captivated by that easy, charming smile of his. At 25 now, Ryan's still got that laid-back vibe that draws people in, like moths to a porch light. We were kids when we fell hard for each other, tangled up in a romance that felt like a summer storm, wild, electric, unstoppable. By 20, we were engaged, and at 21, we said I do in my parents' backyard, surrounded by family, laughter, and mason jars filled with wildflowers. It was simple, messy, perfect. Life settled into a rhythm after that. I poured coffee at a local diner part-time, juggling shifts with online classes for a business degree, dreaming of something bigger than small-town limits. Ryan, meanwhile, had grease under his nails from long days as a mechanic, always tinkering with some beat-up car in our garage. I'd watch him sometimes, lost in the way his hands moved with such confidence, and I'd feel this warmth, this certainty that we were building something real. But there were others in his orbit, too, Jake and Tyler, his brothers in all but blood. They've been around since the early days, shadows from Ryan's past that never quite faded. I've always known they meant a lot to him, but I've never felt fully at ease with them, especially Tyler. There's something about the way he watches, quiet and piercing, like he's peeling back layers I didn't even know I had. But that's a thought for another time. Let me take you to the night everything started to unravel. It was a typical Friday evening, the kind where the week's weight sits heavy on your shoulders. I'd just gotten home from a grueling shift at the coffee shop, my apron still smelling of burnt espresso and stale pastries. Ryan was already there, kicking off his boots by the door, his hands smudged with grease from the garage. He looked up with that familiar grin, but there was a spark in his eyes I couldn't quite place. "Guess who's in town for the weekend?" he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Jake and Tyler. They're crashing at the old hotel on Route 17. Thought we could swing by their room for a few drinks before hitting a bar. What do you say?" I hesitated, leaning against the kitchen counter, my feet aching from standing all day. "I don't know, Rye. I'm beat. And you know I've never really clicked with those guys. Tyler especially. He's just intense." My voice trailed off, but Ryan stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. "Come on, Em, it'll be fun. I want you to get to know them better. They're family to me." There was a push in his tone, a need I couldn't ignore, so I sighed and gave in, nodding with a forced smile. "All right, fine. Just for a bit, though." So we headed out into the cool night air, the hum of crickets following us as we drove down the cracked asphalt of Route 17 to that rundown hotel with its flickering neon sign. My stomach churned with unease, but I told myself it was just exhaustion, nothing more. When we pushed open the door to their room, the smell hit me first, a stale mix of cigarette smoke and cheap beer that hung heavy in the cramped space. 2 double beds took up most of the room, their faded comforters rumpled like they'd been slept in for days. Empty cans littered the nightstand, glinting under the dim yellow light of a single lamp. Jake was sprawled on one bed, his boots still on, and he shot up with a loud, "Hey, finally! Thought you'd bailed on us!" His grin was wide, almost too wide, like he was in on a joke I didn't get. Tyler, though, just nodded from the corner where he leaned against the wall, his eyes catching mine for a fleeting second before darting away. That look, it sent a shiver down my spine, sharp and unplaceable. I forced a laugh as Jake started cracking one-liners about some old story from their teenage days, his voice booming over the low hum of a TV no one was watching. Ryan grabbed a couple of cold cans from a cooler by the door, popping one open for me with a wink before handing it over. I perched on the edge of the nearest bed, the mattress sagging under me, and sipped the bitter drink, feeling like an outsider in a room full of history I wasn't part of. The small talk dragged on, awkward and stilted on my end, while the guys seemed right at home, their laughter echoing off the peeling wallpaper. Then the air shifted. Ryan slid onto the bed beside me, his hand resting on my knee, warm and deliberate. His voice dropped low, almost like he'd practiced what came next. "I've been thinking about something for a while now, Em. Something I can still feel the weight of that moment in the hotel room, the way the air turned sour and thick after Ryan's words cut through me like a blade. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs as I stumbled out of that suffocating space, my hands trembling uncontrollably. I snatched my purse from the bed, the strap catching on my wrist as I nearly tripped over an empty can on the floor. Ryan's voice chased after me, sharp and pleading. "Em, wait, come back!" But I wouldn't stop. I shoved through the door, the cheap wood slamming behind me, and staggered into the dimly lit hallway of that rundown hotel on Route 17. My breaths came in jagged gasps, my mind a chaotic mess of shame and betrayal. I didn't make it far. My legs gave out in the stairwell just a few steps down, the cold concrete biting into my skin as I collapsed against the wall. Sobs tore out of me, raw and unstoppable, echoing in the empty space. I felt dirty, used, like I'd been stripped bare in more ways than one. My mind kept replaying the night, every word, every touch, every wrong turn. How could Ryan even suggest something so twisted? Had he planned this all along, luring me here under the guise of a casual hangout? Did he ever truly love me, or was I just some pawn in a sick game? I buried my face in my hands, the salt of my tears stinging my cheeks, trying to scrub away the memory of Tyler's lingering gaze and the way Ryan just watched. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in that spiral of hurt, before I heard footsteps. Ryan appeared at the top of the stairs, his face pale, almost ghostly under the flickering fluorescent light. He hesitated, then descended slowly, his boots scuffing against the steps. "Em, please, let me explain," he started, his voice softer now, almost desperate. "It was just an experiment, okay? I thought it might, I don't know, bring us closer somehow." His words felt like a slap, hollow and absurd. Here I am, standing in the tiny living room of the home we built together, my bag slung over my shoulder, the weight of it nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. The air feels stale, like it's been holding its breath for this moment just as long as I have. I look at Ryan, really look at him, and all I see is the man who shattered everything I thought we were. My voice trembles, but I force the words out, each one a jagged edge cutting through the silence. "I can't forgive you, Ryan. Not for that night. Not for twisting something so sacred into a cruel charade. You orchestrated it, manipulated me into a situation that stripped me of everything, my trust, my dignity, every vow we made under that backyard sky. How could you do that to me? To us? To..." He shifts on his feet, his face hardening at first, a wall of defensiveness rising fast. "You're overreacting, Em. It wasn't like that. You're blowing this way out of proportion," he says, his tone clipped, like I'm the one who's lost my mind. But then, as my silence burns into him, his mask slips and anger flares up, raw and ugly. You act like you're some saint here. Don't pretend you didn't play a part. You were right there, just as much into it as I was. Don't pin this all on me. His words slice deep, reopening wounds I've barely begun to stitch closed. Rage and shame boil inside me, a toxic storm churning in my gut, and I can't hold it back anymore. I step closer, my voice rising, sharp and unsteady. Don't you dare turn this around! You betrayed me, Ryan! You put me in that position, treated our marriage like some twisted game for your amusement. I trusted you and you broke me. I see his fists clench at his sides, the vein in his neck pulsing like a warning sign, his jaw tight as if he's biting back something worse. The late afternoon light spills through the window, casting long, harsh shadows across the room, stretching over the "here I am" months after that final, gut-wrenching confrontation with Ryan, sitting in the quiet of a new reality I never imagined I'd have to build from scratch. The divorce process was as cold as the rain that poured down on that dreary Tuesday when it all became official. I remember walking into the courthouse, my cheap heels clicking on the tiled floor, echoing in the sterile hallway. I'd hired a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman who spoke in clipped sentences and handed me papers to sign with a pen that felt heavier than it should have. Each signature was a cut, severing years of promises in black ink. The judge barely looked at us, just another case on a crowded docket, and with a bang of the gavel, our marriage dissolved like mist in the morning sun. I walked out into the downpour, no umbrella, letting the rain soak through my coat, feeling the weight lift and shatter all at once. I moved into a tiny apartment a week later, a shoebox of a place with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall. My first night, I had nothing but a mattress on the floor and a few boxes of belongings, clothes, a cracked mug from our old kitchen, a photo of us I couldn't bring myself to unpack. I sat there, cross-legged on that bare mattress, staring at the empty space, feeling both freed and utterly adrift. Liberation came with a price. I was starting over, but I didn't know who I was without Ryan's shadow over me. The silence was deafening, and in it, I heard every doubt, every regret. Nights were the worst, lying awake, tears soaking into the pillow, questioning my worth, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Guilt gnawed at me, especially over what unfolded with Tyler that night at the hotel. I know now that Ryan pulled the strings, weaving a web of manipulation I couldn't see through in my vulnerability, but the shame still lingered, a stain I couldn't wash out. I cut Ryan off completely after the papers were signed. He tried reaching out a few times, leaving voicemails with half-hearted apologies that sounded more like excuses. I listened to the first one. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.